Hello and hi, Alexandre. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Samir.
How are you
Thanks
doing?
for all good, and thanks, Makidas, for the very heated speech. That was much appreciated.
It was really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Super. So, Alexandre, I understand that you have a 15-minute presentation prepared. Is that correct? Or you
it can be a discussion, or I mean, it's just 2 slides. So.
Okay, perfect. That's totally cool. So, Rob, just let us know when we can start, and then we'll go ahead and get started and start this conversation. Oh, sorry, Hester. We're ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready to go. All right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may be and whatever time it may be. Welcome to this another session at the Future Loss Virtual Summit, Negotiating the New Normal. Today we have a very special guest, Alexandre Lemille, who joined us before on a panel exploring the circular economy and what that future holds in store for us. And today, Alexandre will be talking to us about the circular human sphere and towards the regenerative societies and what that actually means. So Alexandre, I'd love to invite you to just introduce a little bit more about who you are and how you've come to do the work that you are now doing.
Oh, that's a big question. Well, who I am, I'm just a citizen of this world, so there's nothing much about it. Where I come from, I come from France, as you can hear from my accent. I'm a farmer's son, okay, and so I grew up in a farm, and I was hit by the story of apartheid in my youth, which whereby I did a thesis around apartheid, and then went on to live in South Africa for several years. I'm now back in France, but if I have an offer to go back to South Africa, I will go tomorrow. Basically, I've been traveling quite a lot through work, through discoveries, and while I was working for a large telecom company, they were financing and funding the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And that's the foundation that made this concept of circular economy visible to the world, which was like about 10 years ago. And in a nutshell, circular economy, for those who are not aware of the concept, is a regenerative and restorative economic model by design. That means that we will make sure with any actors in a specific country, from public, private space, local government with laws and association and NGOs. I mean, anyone, including obviously citizens, will endeavor to design out waste and pollution from our markets, from our countries, from our economies. And by designing out, it doesn't mean recycling, because recycling needs waste to work. By designing out means, like my phone here, everything can be opened, dismantled, and reused. All the components are accessible, and they can be reused, hopefully endlessly, within the economic model. So that's a new model that's much needed, because we are hit by pollution, by climate change, and by waste at an unprecedented rate. And circular economy is seen as a solution addressing up to 40% of the climate change and climate. It's not a crisis, because a crisis is just a momental event. It's a long future of climate changes that we will have to face, and the best way to adapt it is to make sure that we reduce as much as possible our impact to climate. So circular economy is one of the solutions to address that.
You know, the first question that pops into my mind, and maybe it's good to just start there, just to give a little bit more of context before you go into the slides that you shared, is, well, what is actually the difference between sort of this word regenerative and circular, and how do we think about those?
That's a good question, but I mean, to me, they are the same. To me, the circularity of system means that we understand how feedback loops work. So, i.e., we follow the natural cycles. I will give you an example, and this is exactly the same for regenerative systems. Basically, a tree is our best life example. Why a tree? Because a tree develops itself as an ecosystem element, i.e., it's not just the tree by itself. The tree communicates with other trees, and we just discovered that a couple of years ago. So that's how much we don't know about how nature works. And the tree will generate energy through photosynthesis, and will feed the soils through leaves and branches falling on the soils to regenerate the soils for the fauna and for the flora around it, the tree to feed and to survive around its ecosystem. And the tree develops branches, but it doesn't need more than 80% of the branches that it grows is not for itself, but for the entire ecosystem of birds and insects, and to produce photosynthesis. So this is not even for the offsprings. It's more like it's an element of an ecosystem. And that's what we need to mimic and replicate in human lives. It's that to understand that we are part of a symbiotic world where there are exchanges of energies and resources. And these resources are of two different origin, biological origin, so everything that has to do with our ecosystems. I don't use the term nature because nature is a separation from human, and we are all part of nature. So I use the term ecosystem, but that means the biosphere. So biological elements and technical elements. So technical element is, well, that lamp or my computer. And those technical elements needs to go back to the economy the fastest way possible so that it can be reused, refurbished, remanufactured, making things as new again. So I will give you an example of the technical elements so that we all understand that that's my phone, and my phone is basically you can open it, and you can see that everything has screws, so you can access all modules and all components of that phone. It's open source, so you can go downstairs, and all of a sudden in your country, any country, it will generate job activities because that phone is repairable, maintainable, refurbishable, remanufacturable, i.e. you can reuse all the components, and the shops next downstairs in the street will welcome this kind of phone because they won't break the screen or they won't break the components. And if the screen breaks, you just order a new one online. So that's a very interesting economy from job creation standpoint. In 6 months from now, the shop owner will tell you, "Oh, Alex, or Samir, I do have a new camera module for you. I know you like taking cameras and photos. Photos. Here is the new module for the camera, and it's going to be made in your country. Okay, not at the other end of the world." And the last thing about this is that it's your next source of component or rare earths, metals. They are there. And just imagine millions of units of smartphone, computer, video projector, TVs that are made like this. So you can now recreate products locally and maintain those products thanks to human energy. So that's a very interesting approach. And for the biological cycles, it's everything that has to do with textile and paper books and so on that you can send back to nature outside of designing out chemicals, harmful chemicals, so that it can regenerate the soil to feed a world of 10 billion people.
I think that's so important that you mentioned that, that not only does this sort of circular approach take care of the environment that we're living in, but it also takes care of the humans that are working. And I think a lot of people sometimes have the tendency to think that, if we want to go circular, then that means we have to make sacrifices and do things less. And of course, to some extent we do. But I think what you're sharing with us is that, yeah, there is actually a benefit to human life in making this transition.
Yes, there is definitely a benefit to human life. We just need to be careful on one thing, and that's why I'm very insistent on preserving human values, is that we think about circular economy with our linear mindset. So linearity is, I extract resources from the underground, I turn them into a product, I sell product to consumer, they will consume products, whether these products are food, so you consume food, but you consume smartphone because then you throw them away. Okay, you can resell them obviously, but at the end they will be most probably ending in the landfill, even though the manufacturers are telling you they are being recycled. I mean, the world is barely was 9% recycling, and it's gone down below 9% now. So the recycling story is not flying properly. Yeah, sorry, I forgot what I was about to say, but yeah, the thing is that we think through a linear mindset, meaning we will make sure we develop as many circular solutions as possible, so that I can still be have a monopolistic position in my market. And that's where I intervene to say, okay, circularity goes well with elements, with goods and products. It has to be applied to the ecosystems, because the objective is not to continue consuming as long as the ecosystem can maintain our consumption ratio. The objective is to reduce our consumption so that it can be affordable for everyone to access vital needs. And behind the circular economy, it's a story of, okay, let's continue being consumers and users of goods and services. And I'm like, okay, and the recent event are telling me that I might be right, is that there are communities and people with values, human with different values, and not just monetized value. Our world, the value that we create every day when you wake up is not just to make money. Here we are not making money, we are sharing ideas so that we can improve on our daily lives. And I'm like, okay, if we shift to a next economic model, because that's what circular economy is all about. It's, I doubt we might go for another model than this one, which is aimed to preserve resources and to care for things. So that's really what is needed here, and to design out waste and pollution. But we also need to care for people, and we tend to forget that. And to me, the model is not fully comprehensive, and it's missing the social dimension. And it's not only missing the social dimension, whereby we ensure that in the DNA of the next economic model, values are preserved, and we are recognized for who we are, human beings with lots of values. And we also, something else, we are also part of nature. We are biological elements ourselves. But we are also knowledge, we are empathy, and we are energy. And all of these are abundant in a world heading to 10 billion people. So what I'm saying is that if you care for people together with caring for objects, maybe we are not just users and consumers of products and services in the next model. Maybe we will be considered as beings with a constellation of values that are recognized. Obviously, we need to move away from a GDP-based world. We need to move away from a world that accounts for the destruction of forests to increase the price of furnitures. But this is where this is going. This is going as, okay, for a circular world or regenerative world, but let's not forget that they are people and they are human beings, and they are the complex elements within that model. Obviously, nobody wants to talk about it because they are so complex, and so you don't never expect what they will do. But still, we need to account for it because the world is very populated, because people are saying there are too many people on the planet, but it's not the problem. The problem is how much footprint per capita do you generate? And obviously Europe, America comes on top with the Middle East, and soon China and the rest of the world. So the idea is to say, can we live in a decent life for all of us, not just for the VIP ones or the ones who understand circular economy, but for, and on top of that, the economic actors who understand the economy, the circular economy very well. But how can we create a world where everybody, every community has an opportunity to thrive? That means relocalization of activities, whereby the human activity is no longer taxed, or taxes are being reduced on human activities, i.e. labor tax or you name it, not to work more, but to unleash our potential, because we are numerous people, so that we can fix and repair and maintain goods and services as long as possible in the economy. But unless you design that into your next model, robots will replace you, and robots will increase pressure on the resources that we no longer have. And therefore, we will continue the linear thinking, and some people are telling us that we can go and dig the moon and Mars.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Alexandre, you're of course entrenched in this world. So you're thinking about and seeing everywhere where there might already be examples of circular economies and regenerative communities. So I was wondering if you could share with us about what for you are some of the most exciting and promising actual examples of people sort of leaning towards this kind of regenerative society, and what lessons can we draw from them?
Well, the story of my phone is the best smartphone example. Okay, it's called the Fairphone, and I'm not afraid to advertise for them, because they are really doing a great job. Because that device is not only made from a responsible behavior, because they are trying not to source cobalt and rare earths from countries or mines that have a bad reputation in terms of child labor. But at the same time, we understand why children are working in some countries, because the situation is also very critical. So it's difficult to have this Western mindset for each and every situation. But the Fairphone is trying its best to source responsibly, to make the phone open source, so it's everybody's component. And that's the beauty of it, because the story of the democracies and the capitalism, whereby it's trickling down from the top CEO down to the last employee or the last citizen of the, if there is a last citizen, by the way, of a country, but that everybody will enjoy capitalism is not true, and we know it's not true. But in this example, it can be true, because everything is accessible. So it's nobody's component anymore. It's just either your country's next source of urban mining, or the next job that you can grab to enjoy these devices that are made to be made again. So that's a great social example and environmental and economic example. So you have the three into one here. An example in a completely different field is that I myself volunteer to work 3 hours per month in a bio cooperative where they have bio food. And by being a part of the cooperative myself, so I pay something on a yearly basis, plus I give some of my time. The cost to run that cooperative are lower, and therefore we can access the shop, bio food, at a lower cost. So it's a win-win-win situation here again. So the cooperative works with local farmers, so within 200 kilometers away from the shop. So reduction of impact of the transports, local food. We eat seasonal fruits and vegetables. Everything is made by caring for nature, or we are welcome to return the products. Everybody has reusable bags and so on. We work as a volunteer and we are allowed to go into that shop thanks to the work that we do. So it's also another win-win-win situation here. So these are just two examples of involving people at the heart of circular economy as part of this human sphere that I suggest we implement here.
And two excellent examples. I think, you know, the Fairphone, as you mentioned, is just an incredible sort of feat of incorporating this circular thinking and doing so in a way that also promotes sort of the ethical supply chains and still produces a wonderful you know, product. And of course, the cooperatives and the farm that you're part of, the farmers markets and things like that. That's also a solution that we see now all over the world in virtually any major city that we can visit, which is just incredible. I would like to take a moment, Alex, to invite you to share a little bit about the Humanosphere, so people get a better sense of some of the work you do, and also more specifically, what are the guiding principles of the Humanosphere?
Okay. Let me just have one or two slides, but let me. I cannot share my screen.
I think our tech host Hester will be giving you permission.
Yes, now it's fine.
Excellent.
Thanks. So, I mean, you just have to imagine. I mean, I didn't take the original circular economy graph, but I invite the audience to look at it. I just, I mean, in a matter of time, I need to move straight into the proposed model. But basically, on the left-hand side, you have the biosphere. So the ecosystem whereby food and food is going back, or just the remaining of biological nutrients are going back safely into the soils to regenerate the soils for regenerative agriculture, for permaculture. This is also where we apply the new science of biomimicry. I mean, it's not that new, but it's being implemented as we speak, and all the new techniques of agroforestries, you name it. And this is also where you use biological nutrients such as clothes in different life cycles, and then clothes are evolving into carpet or insulation. So the cotton is being managed responsibly, and the cotton lasts over 30 to 50 years in the economy instead of just a couple of years in today's economy. So that's your bio business models in the biosphere on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side is what we call the technical sphere or the technosphere. This is typically the smartphone example that I use. So here we have several business models whereby you maintain and you repair the objects so that they live the longest time possible in the economy. They can also be accessed as a service. So this is what I assume here, this understanding of splitting our economy into two parts, the biological part and the technical part. And what I'm saying is that, is an economic model sufficient here? Aren't we supposed to align ourselves at the ecosystemic model, at the ecosystemic level, so that we develop and we enable this framework where, in fact, at the end of the day, preserving life is the ultimate goal. And this is only that goal. And I'm asking myself and the audience usually, I mean, what are we here for? Are we just here for on this planet just to be users and consumers of services and products? or are we here for a more beautiful objective? And that's the question we ought to ask ourselves when we move into a new economic revolution. I'm not saying that if it wasn't the case, but since we are thinking about what will be the next model, I would suggest that we think twice before we jump into that next model. So the question is that, shall we move into at the ecosystem level instead of just looking at the economic model? An ecosystem model where we are considered in a we ecosystem, whereby we are there part of other species, including humans. And how far are we from that model? So what I did with the circular economy is that I inserted a human sphere between that biosphere and the technosphere, taking into account that the human sphere belongs to the biosphere. That's why the arrow, the feedback loop arrow is bigger in the biosphere. And the biosphere is far more important than the technosphere, the material economy, for our survival, and also in terms of discoveries that we can make through biomimicry, permaculture, and all these concepts that are being applied everywhere in the world. And the question is that, okay, we are numerous humans. Maybe we can make those two sphere circle longer, but we need to understand our roles and function. The function towards the biosphere. I mean, how much are we nature? How much can we adapt to that ecosystem so that we no longer have a footprint, but on the contrary, we have a net positive footprint towards the biosphere. So how can we do that? And the next question is, how can we make sure that the technical sphere turns in circle the longest way possible? And to do that, we need to understand how far we are. And why am I showing you this slide is that since we are talking about legal framework, the idea here is to say, if we want to go into that economy, and if we want to make sure that this is not just to address the issues until 2100, as we see in many newspapers, but in many papers, but for good, we need to build an efficient and effective system that increase resilience as we go along and that grow back the biosphere. We need to understand how far we are. And to understand how far we are, we start from the end, and it's called the distance to. And we understand how far we are from a full system circularity, how deeply we need to adapt to our ecosystem. How do we make sure that the economy, which is supposed to be good to households as per the origin of the word, how much is this economy valuing everyone and valuing everything? How much are we advancing humanity away from progress? Because progress has this background thinking from a fossil fuel era, and from always advancing, always moving into innovations that are energy hungry, and this is problematic. So we need to advance humanity in taking into account those 5 points that I'm highlighting here. And then how much can we change? Because we need to realign our systems to the Earth systems, and to reconfirm that we belong here. We are anchored here, and this is very important to change mindsets so that we understand what it takes to say that we belong and we are grounded here. So that's for setting up a legal framework, saying we need laws to take us to those points. And another thing that needs to be happening is that it needs to preserve human values on top of taking us to the next century. And to do that, we need to strengthen the communities wherever they are in the globe, not necessarily the communities that belong to an official country or nation or government, but communities that belong to the same biological region, the regions whereby the ecosystem has a similar climate and type of biosphere. And basically, to succeed in preserving these communities and in in strengthening those communities so that they can sort themselves out in the next centuries by accessing goods, as I showed with the smartphone, everybody has the skills to repair this kind of easy to access devices. So this is the strategy of avoiding scarcity here on the right-hand side in the technosphere. So we avoid resources from disappearing, and this is critical. And by developing a deep caring model, you can advance as humanity, and the economy becomes this caring economy for households and its citizens. And by also revaluing abundance. I mean, nature and ecosystems are full of abundance, like I was explaining with the tree. I mean, the tree doesn't count. There's no counters that tells you how much unit has the trees produced in terms of photosynthesis. So the cycles in the ecosystems are regeneratives, and we need to value that regenerative approach to cycles, so that we can adapt as much as we can, and we can give the tools to local communities to adapt to these new cycles. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but that's basically based on the Human Development Index of the United Nations, whereby lawyers and legal experts are invited to create these diverse circles that will strengthen in any communities in the world. This has been published in Elsevier academic journal, and it's called Making the Circular Economy Work for Human Development. I mean, the audience can reach out to me, and I will share the paper with them. But basically, from the external macroeconomic policy framework for sustainable resource use into the internal sustainable lifestyle and livelihoods, there are ways to strengthen local communities so that they thrive within their local ecosystems. And this is the best way to link circular economy with human development. So I will stop there, Samir, because I know we are limited in times, but that's the message I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you, Alex, and such an important message. Where if people want to look into your work, where can they find you, or more about what you just presented to us?
LinkedIn, Twitter.
Okay.
But the paper is on Elsevier academic journal. But yeah, I can share it.
So we have just about a minute left, Alexandre, so we're really running out of time. But I see that Kim has asked a question in the chat. And she's and her question, there's a couple questions there, but I think that the final question there is, are laws needed because there's not a belief in humans, that there's not a belief that humans will do this work themselves? What are your reflections on that?
Well, again, I'm not saying humans will do the work as we used to do in a factory, in a linear economy. It's more like granting capabilities and choices for local communities to thrive with the resources that they have in a regenerative and restorative manner. Okay, so it's a new way of, I mean, we see that in some villages and in some local communities whereby they move into permaculture, they start bartering, and they start helping each other. And this is exactly that kind of role that, I mean, the laws are very important. I mean, everywhere in the world, governments are invited to pass circular economy laws, to inform the consumer about the footprint of a product, to inform about the origin of the product, to inform about the dangerosity of the product, because unfortunately a lot of food is near to poisonous with all the GMOs and all the, I mean, all the chemicals around with the endocrine disruptors are highly problematic. And linear economy has become problematic because it's too efficient and not enough caring for people and products. Therefore, we need the law to protect the citizens of this planet in order to go back to an agriculture that makes sense away from harmful substances. So definitely, I mean, the law is there to say, okay, we need to stop and to reduce our impact because we are using too much material. So how can we do differently by avoiding food waste, by diminishing extractive activities, by making sure products are being designed for longer usage, and so on and so forth. So laws are very critical here.
Absolutely, they are. And as you mentioned in your presentation and the thoughts that you shared, it's just a piece of the puzzle. You know, there's so many different dimensions that need to be approached holistically for us to be able to make this shift. So unfortunately, we're out of time, Alex. Time does run out very quickly. But we're moving on next to the collaborative journey over here on this stage. And the collaborative journey is the point and the space and time where the people in the summit can come together to interact and talk with each other about what they learned and explore some of these pressing questions amongst themselves. So I'd actually like to invite you, Alex, to maybe pose a question to the group over here and maybe think about, you know, what is an important question that we should be asking ourselves, or a question that you just want to pose just to shape the conversation here a little bit. Do you have anything that comes to mind for a breakout room?
In the context of collaborative societies?
It's up to you. It's really up to you. So
no, the question I have is that what is your plan to preserve future generations? And it's a big question, I know, but from that question on, you can unfold what you can do every day through work and through your home activities to understand how you can slow down the waste stages, how you can slow down the pollution or the food waste, which is a drama, so that every action that you do will preserve climatic changes and will enhance the life of your children and their own children. So
it's an amazing question, Alex, and I do want to pose it. I see Kim, thank you so much for putting that into the chat for the rest of us to see as well. So Hester, if you could make breakout rooms for 3 people, and we'll just have about 8 minutes or so for us to explore this question with each other. Such an important one. So what is your plan to preserve future generations? So just take a couple minutes and talk amongst yourselves, and then we'll come back here to just reflect with what came out of these conversations. So Hester, if you could open up the rooms when you are ready. I see they have opened up. And Alex, of course, you're free to join if you would like. So thank you all. I see the others have joined us now back from the breakout room. Now, I understand that there's only one room full of you exploring this question. So I'd love to invite any one of you, if you'd be so kind to volunteer and share with us, what were some of the insights, what were some of the conversation points that came up with this question? So the question was, what is your plan to preserve future generations? Is there anyone that would like to share very briefly what came up for you? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll share. Our group was pretty talkative. I think what we all had was this realization that we are all coming into consciousness of that this is the penultimate question of our lives, is becoming aware that we have a responsibility to future generations and becoming aware of all of our consumptive habits that have been unconscious, that are actually robbing from future generations. I don't know if Lakita or Lexi or Marion wants to add to that, but.
Do any of you want to add very briefly to what Kim has shared with us from the group?
Yes, I would. I think Kim is absolutely right. And I think this is very important. The question that I posed at the end of when we were just about to come back was also around the different paradigm of leadership that is needed for this to occur. One where we consider our value base, and that we can facilitate a step of enabling people to see that being kind and compassionate and caring is not something to be despised, that it's actually the only way forward if we are to survive as a human race.
Thank you for sharing that, Marianne. And this is such an important question, and I wish we had more time. But I do hope that in our next collaborative journey, which will be at 4:30 CET, we'll be able to think a little bit more concretely about what actions we might take to preserve future generations.